This morning, the Army is now investigating what could be the largest sexual misconduct scandal in U.S. military history. The case involves a Texas Army OBGYN described in the lawsuit as a, quote, predator in uniform. So far, at least 65 women, including at the Army Medical Center at Fort Hood, accused Dr. Blaine McGraw of sexual misconduct. The civil lawsuit alleges that Army investigators recovered, quote, thousands of photographs and videos from Dr. McGraw's cell phone. The images depict female patients, many of whom remain unidentified, taken over the course of multiple years, according to the lawsuit. Some of the women also claim they spoke up and felt the Army swept their concerns under the rug. CNN anchor Brianna Keilar doing this story for us, joining us now this morning. You have this exclusive new reporting on what led the Army to investigate this, Doctor. What are you learning this morning?
Yeah, Sarah, that's right. And my colleagues Izzy Karshudian, Haley Britsky, and I spoke to dozens of sources for this story, including a number of victims. We discovered the Army investigated this doctor at least twice before, in 2022 and 2024 in Texas and Hawaii, due to patient complaints, and nothing came of it. And that many patients had complained in some fashion over the years. I spoke to multiple sources and learned what prompted this investigation was actually a husband raising hell. It was the husband of a female Army officer who was a patient of Dr. McGraw's. This is a combat veteran, a former infantryman who served in Afghanistan, a job where you keep your head on a swivel, you're constantly taking inventory of your surroundings. And that's what he apparently was doing at his wife's appointment that he had accompanied her to last month when this gynecologist began a transvaginal ultrasound. He saw the doctor was recording his wife in this very vulnerable situation, according to a source familiar with what the husband later told Army investigators. The couple tried to report it to the hospital, to base leadership at Fort Hood. It was a very frustrating process, we learned from sources. And at one point, the husband, apparently boiling over, actually screams in a hotel lobby, "I just caught a doctor recording my wife's vagina." That was about a month ago, and an Army-led criminal investigation ensues from there. Investigators find that visual evidence on Dr. McGraw's phone, sources told us. They start alerting women in those images. They start sending out letters to the approximately 3,000 patients that he saw at Fort Hood and also Tripler Army Medical Center in Hawaii. And one alleged victim files that lawsuit, that civil suit last week, accusing Major McGraw of recording her pelvic and breast exam. We spoke with victims and sources who are in touch with many victims not mentioned in that lawsuit, who say McGraw frequently had a phone in his pocket. We have obtained video and also a picture of him in the clinical setting, so you can see what they're talking about. And I spoke with one victim who said McGraw gave her a forceful, unscheduled pelvic exam that actually resulted in breaking her water before her scheduled date to be induced. And then she says he took steps to hide that he'd even done the exam. The Army suspended this doctor. He checked into a civilian inpatient mental health facility, we learned, according to court records. And we've also learned from sources that he was scheduled to leave that facility yesterday. Right now, we're waiting to see, Sarah, what move the Army makes and what could be one of, if not the largest sexual misconduct case in military history.
My goodness. I mean, what is the doctor or his representative saying, and what is Fort Hood saying as well?
Major McGraw's lawyer gave me this statement acknowledging new allegations since that lawsuit came out last week, saying, quote, "Beyond the allegations themselves, we've seen no records to support that patients were touched in a way that was not medically indicated. We believe that the Army previously resolved at least one of the allegations because of an eyewitness account by another provider present. We'll continue to cooperate. We remain disappointed in law enforcement's handling of the investigation." Fort Hood says that they recognize the great trust and responsibility inherent in caring for our soldiers, families, and beneficiaries, and will continue to care for everyone involved throughout this process. But legal counsel, Sarah, at Fort Hood has taken the what's seen as the unusual step of subpoenaing communications between one law firm and the more than 60 McGraw accusers that they represent, communications that you might expect would be privileged. And this really speaks to the bigger issue that many of these alleged victims are feeling, which is what they describe as an instinct by the Army to protect the institution, rather than these individuals, these soldiers, these military family members who make up the Army, and certainly taking that unusual step, according to what legal experts describe it as, a step that they expect will be an unsuccessful effort to subpoena communications of these alleged victims and their lawyer, does not feel to them like an effort to protect them.
Yeah, the attorney-client privilege is a huge privilege that courts are loath to undo. Brianna Keeler, great reporting from you and the team. Thank you so much for this story. Wow.
Attorney Christine Dunn, she represents several of Dr. Blaine McCraw's accusers. Christine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And tell us what your clients are alleging. Tell us about your clients and what they're saying.
So my law firm, Sanford Heisler, represents 6 of Dr. McGraw's patients. And honestly, I keep getting phone calls, so I think that number is going to keep going up. They all say that it felt very different, the examination with Dr. McGraw, than any other medical exam they'd ever had. Some from the very beginning said it felt more like sexual touching than medical touching. For some of my clients, he did unnecessary exams, unnecessary breast exams. One of my clients, he did 4 pelvic exams in a month. And then, of course, I have several clients who have been notified that they were videotaped by him in their most intimate parts. And it was without their consent and without their knowledge. And all of them are really reeling.
I'm sure. And following the new allegations that have come out since the lawsuit was filed last week, Major McGraw's lawyer has given me a statement saying, in part, beyond the allegations themselves, we've seen no records to support that patients were touched in a way that was not medically indicated. We believe that the Army previously resolved at least one of the allegations because of an eyewitness account by another provider present. We'll continue to cooperate. We remain disappointed at Army law enforcement's handling of the investigation. What's your reaction to that?
I think it's really interesting that he's complaining that there's no records documenting this. What did they expect? That Dr. McGraw was going to document that he sexually abused his patients or that he did unnecessary exams? It's not the kind of thing where you would expect records to confirm the behavior. And here you have dozens of women who are giving very similar accounts. That's pretty compelling evidence.
The Army says they're committed to supporting patients affected by these allegations. We have swiftly established a call center, assigned a special victims counsel, and are actively notifying patients. Additionally, we have created a patient support line to offer access to resources and assistance. We encourage anyone with information related to the investigation to contact the Department of the Army Criminal Investigation Division. How do the accusers see the Army's role in all of this?
They think that the Army needs to be held accountable. The Army was negligent here. They failed these patients. This many women could not be abused if the Army was doing its job. They failed to properly supervise him, they failed to properly monitor him, and they didn't take the red flag seriously. So these women all tell me, I want the Army held accountable too, so that this doesn't happen to anyone else in the future.
What does that look like, that accountability?
So a lawsuit against the Army is under something called the Federal Tort Claims Act. So the first step in that is that you file an administrative complaint with the Army. So that's what I am doing for my clients right now. I am filing their administrative complaints, and that's the very first step in ultimately filing a lawsuit against the Army. I believe that you have to hold institutions accountable. It's the only way to create real change.
We should note, this is Fort Hood, right?
Correct.
Which is supposed to have reckoned with taking sexual harassment and sexual assault reports more seriously after the 2020 murder of Vanessa Guillen, who had reports that she'd made reports about sexual harassment. They had not been looked at. They'd not been followed up or sent up the chain of command. And the Army is certainly no stranger to this idea of a medical practitioner abusing their station of trust, right? You represent dozens of plaintiffs in another case. You filed a civil suit on their behalf against an Army doctor, Major Michael Stockin, who is serving over 13 years for carrying out sexual misconduct under the guise of medical treatment. What does it take to make sure that these kinds of things don't happen?
Well, again, you really have to hold the institutions accountable. Until these institutions are called to the mat, they aren't going to change. They can give lip service to we are making changes, but unless they are really consistent in enforcing, strong protocols and policies to protect patients, nothing's going to change.
Talking to victims, one of the things that struck me was their memories that are supposed to be so beautiful, right? I spoke with one victim who said something that amounted to, one day my son is going to want to talk about when he was born, and I don't want to talk about it. It makes me want to throw up, she said. And she feels that that's something that she says Dr. McGraw took from her. What are you hearing from clients?
Honestly, I've heard almost that exact same story from one of my clients. I think there are a lot of women out there who have that same experience. I'm also hearing that they're terrified to ever go to the doctor again. They're afraid they're going to be victimized again. They've told me, I'm afraid to have another child because I'll have to go to another OBGYN. And he has really robbed their sense of security and safety. He has robbed their sense of confidence in the medical profession and in the Army.
And just to be clear, these are service members and military spouses we're talking about.
Correct.